Welcome to Police Academy Prep. This is Deputy Z. Today we will be going through the Law Enforcement Basic Recruit Book of the Police Academy, going into Chapter 12, Traffic Crash Investigations. This will be the in-depth recording version where I read from the entire chapter and provide insight to potential test questions and real-life situations. Let's go ahead and jump into the chapter here. So we're going to have 11 lessons, so just a single unit here. It's going to be about 25 pages or so, 25-30. Let's go and jump in here. All right, law enforcement officers conduct traffic crash investigations using a systematic approach, similar to the approach they use when responding to a robbery, battery, or homicide. All right, traffic crash laws. A traffic crash, test question, is a collision involving one or more vehicles in motion causing property damage, personal injury, serious bodily injury, or death. A traffic crash is often the result of an unintentional, non-criminal act. When someone crashes a vehicle to cause damage or injury intentionally, the incident is not a crash but a crime, such as aggravated battery or murder. We actually had one of these a couple weeks ago where I work. Ex-girlfriend saw the ex-boyfriend and was trying to nail him, hit his car multiple times over the course of like a quarter mile. Pretty good case here, but you see something like that, it opens up your perspective a little bit. The majority of traffic crashes do not involve criminal activity. However, treat each traffic crash as a potential crime scene until you determine the crash did not result from a criminal act. And that's exactly why you do so. Because we arrived it came out as a normal traffic crash. We actually heard it from down the street. And, you just assume it's a normal traffic crash. People are coming and going from the scene. You're trying to figure everything out. We're missing another vehicle. Turns out another traffic crash comes out down the street. And turns out they left because they were in fear that she was going to keep running them over. Interesting stuff. So that's why they always say, make sure you treat it as a crime scene because you do never know. Don't start moving stuff. Don't start letting people walk away, etc. All right, understanding Florida traffic laws will help you make these determinations as well as manage a crash scene within the law. You will also need to be able to defend these decisions in court by associating the corresponding Florida law to the facts of the incident. Make sure you know that Chapter 316 of the Florida Statute, State Uniform Traffic Control, is the statutory chapter that governs traffic crash investigations in Florida. So again, Chapter 316, I would say normally you don't need to remember these. I would remember that one just because it is all about traffic crashes, and that entire chapter governs traffic crashes. So again, that's Chapter 316. 10 steps to managing a crash scene and investigation. Normally I'm not a huge fan of steps and memorizing them, but it looks like this is going to be one of those chapters like the last one where it's going to be a lot of steps and it's a smaller chapter, so I would say it's safe to assume some of those steps are probably going to be on the test, so try to memorize what you can. All right, you must react quickly to a traffic crash incident and immediately begin to manage the scene. Although you may find yourself performing several steps at a time, and some steps may occur in a different order, these 10 basic steps should occur during a traffic crash investigation. Step 1, approach the traffic crash scene safely. Step 2, assess the scene of the crash. Step 3, secure a safe environment at a crash scene. Step 4, provide first aid to injured people if necessary. Step 5, gather traffic crash information. Step 6, investigate to determine how and why the crash occurred. Step 7, complete driver exchange of information. Step 8, take enforcement action. Step 9, return the scene to normal as quickly as possible. And Step 10, document the crash. All right, so Step 1 is approach the traffic crash safely. After getting a call from dispatch for a traffic crash, drive immediately and safely to the scene. Safety is a critical component when responding to the scene of a crash. However, follow sound driving principles and use lights and sirens when necessary. Get as much information as possible from dispatch, descriptions, vehicles, etc. All right. Step 2, assessing the scene of the crash. Your initial response will include a quick assessment to decide if you need to request additional assistance. As you approach, keep an eye out for hazardous materials. If you do need additional resources like EMS, more units to block traffic, request them. Make sure to locate all involved vehicles or people. Make sure to locate all types of damage. Look for things such as skid marks, damaged signs, landscaping, buildings, etc. Manage any fires. So whether you can take it out or fire rescue needs to take it out, figure out if there's down power lines and wires, etc. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Okay, direct people away from the scene if necessary. Use your PA system if you need to. All right, let's get into some hazardous materials here. Dispatch might send you to a traffic crash scene involving a vehicle carrying hazardous materials which can pose a significant danger. The U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, you've probably already gone through this in some other chapters, defines a hazardous material, aka hazmat, as any substance or material that, when released, may cause harm, serious injury, or death to humans or animals, or harm the environment. Chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive, CBR&E threats include both industrial and weaponized chemical hazards. So I would remember CBR&E, that was on the test for us, and remember that is chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive. Industrial chemical hazards occur when hazardous materials are released due to accidents. Some examples include accidents involving tankers or semi-trailers, railroad cars, gasoline stations, and manufacturing plants. Okay, before approaching, look for hazardous conditions, fluid on the ground, clouds of smoke, injured people on the road, etc. Okay, this is where you get into our ERG, the Emergency Response Guidebook, which identifies hazards, materials, outlines basic actions for first responders, recommends area of protective action, and gives responders an initial safety plan. Okay, make sure to refer to the EKG when responding to a scene. Sorry, the ERG. The ERG is composed of color-coded sections. The white section includes the introduction, instructions, guidance, and placards. The yellow and blue sections identify material, while the orange sections list responsive guidelines related to potential hazards, public safety, and emergency response. Finally, the green section contains information on evacuation details for certain materials. For the sake of the test, you will need to know those colors and what they do. So that paragraph right there, get that ingrained in your memory. Again, the white section is introduction, instructions, guidance, placards. Yellow and blue identify materials. Orange, response guidelines for hazards, public safety, and emergency response. And the green contains information on evacuation details. The U.S. Department of Transportation, DOT, has established the United Nations North American, UNNA, 4-digit numbering system to identify hazardous materials. That was on the test. They said, was it 3-digit, 4-digit, 5-digit? So just remember it's 4-digit. All right. You'll be able to identify any material used in the ERG by finding any one of the following. You might find the 4-digit number on the placard, the name of the material on the shipping papers or packaging, and the number of the material on the shipping papers or packaging. All right, so for the sake of the ERG, don't really use that in real life. We were never issued one. You're probably not going to be issued one. It seems great when you're going through it, but it's not something you're going to come across that often unless you maybe have an ERG book sitting in the back of your trunk, then maybe, but that's just some realistic advice right there. All right, we're still under here. We're talking about managing additional resources, directing traffic, medical assistance, searching for people, making arrests, etc. Let's see here. Okay, now we have determining jurisdiction. Okay, the first harmful event, test question, or the first event during a traffic crash that caused injury or property damage will determine the jurisdiction of the scene. The first harmful event determines the time, place, and type of crash. Evidence of the first harmful event may be crash debris, fixed property damage, broken glass, gouge marks, or scrape marks. So, for example, we border with another city, and they tried to pawn off a traffic crash to us. When asking the victim of the traffic crash, we're like, hey, what did you hit first? They said, oh, well, I hit the median. So they had the whole road. We had, the sidewalk, and obviously the car ran into the sidewalk off into the bushes. She's like, no, I hit the median first. I remember hitting the median, going over it, and then coming up to the sidewalk. So once we found that information out, we were able to hand it back to the other city and say the first harmful event was the median when their car made contact with the median and hit the median. Now, were we able to determine the exact spot where we hit the median? Not really, because there are gouges and gashes in the concrete all along every median, right? So sometimes it won't be as obvious, but if the victim's saying that they hit the median, then that's what happened. So, okay, should the first harmful event occur outside of your jurisdiction, stay at the crash scene to protect the public and the scene until proper agency arrives. All right, you may be able to assist if necessary. Okay, if you can't determine the jurisdiction, contact Florida Highway Patrol as a statewide jurisdiction. Refer to agency policies and procedure. Obviously, you're probably going to know, or it's going to go to the sheriff office. FHP more has the highway. So I don't know why it says contact FHP. It's the highway. If it's FHP, if you can't determine it, it's probably going to go to the sheriff's office. Something like that. Okay, make sure, obviously, if you think someone's either dead or serious bodily injury, don't move the vehicles. Maintain the crime scene. Redirect traffic. Alright, step 3, securing a safe environment at the crash scene. So yeah, it seems like this whole chapter is going to be straight steps. So memorize the steps, memorize the content inside the steps for the sake of the test. Like I said, it's a short chapter, so expect everything to be in there. Traffic crash scenes draw drivers' attention away from the road and can lead to staring or distracted driving. This slow traffic flow can become a hazard since drivers tend to focus more on the crash and less on driving around the scene. Many secondary crashes happen because of distracted drivers. That was a test question. Nighttime crash scenes compound this hazard because visibility is limited. Obviously, people driving at night have eye problems. They find it difficult to adjust to the lights, etc. Test question, emergency vehicle lights, heavy traffic, or movement on and off the road can reduce visibility. Obviously, traffic conditions, weather conditions, building signs, and terrain can also influence a driver's ability to see the road and any vehicles on it. Alright. Position your vehicle. Test question. The primary tool for controlling traffic is your vehicle, as it warns motorists of the crash scene. Position your vehicle to protect the scene, prevent additional crashes, and redirect the flow of traffic. Park your vehicle in a safe location, visible to oncoming traffic, away from hazards, and to avoid damaging any evidence. Turn on your patrol vehicle's emergency lights. Put your high beams on low. Headlights on low. That might be a test question, even though it seems kind of dumb. They might say, are your high beams on? Are your headlights on low? Are they on normal? Etc. Obviously, keep your emergency lights on throughout the entire process. Okay, make sure you remain visible to oncoming traffic. Wear a reflective vest if necessary. Use, a flashlight with a wand attachment, reflective gloves. These things might be on the test. How are some ways to be visible to traffic? Make sure you know those things. Let's see. Reporting crash vehicles to a safe location. If circumstances allow, move vehicles out of the roadway to prevent more accidents. Okay, so there are exceptions to the rule of moving the vehicle, right? So normal traffic crash, you're supposed to move the vehicles as soon as possible. Here are the 3 exceptions. A traffic crash with injuries or fatalities, don't move the vehicles. The vehicles are too disabled to move. They got no tires on them, you're not moving them. Or the crash scene is a crime scene that will need processing. Now, before they do move their vehicles, try to get everyone's licenses and tell them where to go. That way they don't just leave the scene. Okay, positioning warning devices. Know these for the test. They're going to ask for different warning devices. You have barricades, flares or fuses, message boards, signs, traffic cones, and reflective triangles. Okay, know how to position these warning devices. Consider the following factors. The extent of the scene or the size of the area that needs protection. Determine the distance between the first harmful event and the final resting place of vehicles and debris. The final resting place, or final rest, test question, is the point when all movement resulting from the crash comes to a halt. So they hit the median. In my example, they hit the sidewalk, drove through the grass, and nailed a tree. The final rest, or the final resting place, would be the tree. Okay, the number of traffic lanes. Consider how quickly drivers can react to the traffic disturbance and change lanes. So what that's saying is, give drivers enough room with the cones or whatever you're using so that they can change lanes safely, normally, and it's not all of a sudden just, boom, stop, switch lanes. Because that's going to cause more accidents. So, place warning devices further away if possible. Position one of the officers as the first warning device, further up in traffic so they see, okay, something's going on up here. Make sure you can consider environmental conditions, so whether it's raining or fogging, those are some things you're going to have to be aware of. Okay, flares or fuses can serve as effective warning devices at night, are visible during the day, and are easily stored in the trunk of your patrol vehicle. Obviously, if you're placing a flare, make sure there's no gas, chemical liquids, or hazards on the floor. Okay, we got a diagram here of how to divert traffic and how to put your cones down. Diagram's nothing special. Looks like you're going to be like a car and a half length away. You do cones in front, behind, and next to it. Simple as that. All right, let's see if there's any information here for the sake of the test. Okay, so generally this diagram here is ones that law enforcement normally use. Let's see here. If there is no safe way to protect the scene using traffic barricades, flares, fuses, signs, or cones, then create a roadblock. Okay, the roadblock can prevent injury or damage to motorists and protect the crash scene. Let's see here. Nothing really that I don't see any important stuff here. Alright. Protecting personal property and evidence. Anything important here? Make sure you do a tow receipt. Take an inventory of the vehicle. Okay, process the crime scene if necessary. Obviously, don't touch anything. Blah, blah, blah. Nothing important there. Alright. Now we got step 4, providing first aid to injured people. Okay, traffic crash injuries. A traffic crash can involve people with injuries ranging from non-visible to severe or fatal trauma. Your first aid training should prepare you for responding to trauma-related issues associated with a traffic crash. Traffic crash injuries are classified into 6 legal categories that we use in your incident report. None means no injury. Possible injury is any injury reported or claimed that is not a fatal injury, suspected serious injury, or suspected minor injury. Examples include momentary loss of conscious, claim of injury, limping, or complaint of pain or nausea. So basically, it's not a real injury, but they're claiming something. Use possible injury. Okay. Then we have non-incapacitating injury. Is a non-disabling injury such as a laceration, scrape, or bruise. So it's non-incapacitating means they can do their normal functions, they can walk, etc. An incapacitating injury is a serious bodily injury that is non-fatal, resulting in one or more of the following: severe laceration, resulting in exposure to tissues, organs, or muscles, or a lot of blood loss; broken or distorted extremity, arm or leg; crush injuries, suspected skull, chest, or abdominal injuries; significant burns, which would be second or third degree over 10% or more of the body; unconsciousness when taken from the crash scene, paralysis, etc. Then you have fatal injury, an injury resulting in an individual's death within a 30-day period after the traffic crash accident. Make sure you know 30-day period. They don't have to die on the scene. And know what a non-traffic fatal injury is, which is fatality that is unrelated to a traffic crash incident, such as a heart attack, natural causes, suicide, or homicide. Florida statutes further defines serious bodily injury as an injury to a person, including the driver, which consists of a physical condition that creates a substantial risk of death, serious personal disfigurement, or protracted loss of impairment of the function of a bodily member or organ. Make sure you know that definition as well, because they're going to ask for that definition as well. Okay, now we're going to talk about EMS at a traffic crash scene. Obviously, if you arrive first, provide first aid to the extent that you can. Obviously, EMS is going to relieve you once they arrive. Usually, when it comes to traffic crashes, they're usually there before you. In my experience, where I work, that's the case. That might not be where you're from, but generally, they're there at the same time, right before or right after. So, obviously, make sure if you get there and dispatch is not there, or you don't see them coming in the distance with their lights and sirens, I would advise dispatch, hey, is EMS still en route? Or has anyone notified them yet? Once you get there and determine that there are injuries. Because some of these traffic crashes might come out as no injuries, and then you get there and they're missing a leg, or they're bleeding very seriously, or they're unconscious. Then you can't just go about your day providing first aid, and then 10 minutes go by and you're like, oh my god, I didn't even start EMS, right? So keep that in mind. All right, step 5, gathering traffic crash information. For some realistic, real-life advice, I know I made a video on how to respond to a traffic crash, and I emphasized it there, so go ahead and check out that video as well when you get a chance. It might help you study for the test a little bit too, But the biggest thing to emphasize is always getting their phone number. Because if you happen to forget something and you let them go, let's say you forget their address isn't showing up, their insurance isn't popping up, you forgot to get whatever piece of information, you forgot the make, model of the vehicle, you forgot what lane they were in for the test, for your report, you forgot this or that. If you have your phone number, you just call them. Hey, what lane were you in again? The right lane, middle lane? Oh, okay, you're in the middle lane, thank you, have a good day. But if you don't get someone's phone number, you're screwed. And you can't really guess, right? So just keep that in mind. All right, let's see. Obviously, when everything's chill, that's when you then begin gathering information related to the traffic crash. So whether that's once you're done protecting evidence, you're securing personal property, you're aiding injured people, now you start gathering information. Okay, your role during this is to remain calm and empathetic to the crash victims while managing the scene and investigating the crash. Remember the supporter, stabilizer, and enforcer. Okay, you first need to obtain driver information. So, driver's license, vehicle registration, proof of insurance, any injuries, do they need EMS? Let's see here. People do have to provide this information. They can't say, no, I don't want to. Based on the Florida statutes, a driver involved in a crash resulting in injury or death or damage to another vehicle or property, which is basically every traffic crash, must provide this specific information to you at the scene. Verify their information via David, your FCIC, NCIC, and other appropriate databases. So, obviously, another big trick is a lot of people tend to not have their license on them. I always ask them for a photo. I would say 99% of all people have a photo of their license if they don't have the hard copy. So keep that in mind. A lot of people don't have it, and they're like, oh, I'll give you my name and date of birth. And it's like, yeah, that's great, but that just makes it that much harder to identify. You can't just easily type in the driver's license number with all their information popping up. You have to make sure the spelling's right, you didn't mess up the date of birth, then you got to verify it's them. Obviously, always double verify it's them, but having that driver's license is way better. Usually, obviously, follow your agency policies and procedures, but I'll get the license from somebody, the phone number, and then I'll take a picture of that real quick, and then I'll hand them back their license. Because another mistake, too, is to accidentally take the license and not give it back to them. So I'll have my notepad, I'll have the driver's license on the notepad, and I'll have their phone number right above it, written down. Take a picture of that pop, hand them back their driver's license, move on to the next person. And a lot of times, I'll take the picture wide out. That way I get their license plate and the make and model of their car and the color of the car all in one picture, plus a driver's license and phone number. That way I can associate the license with the person, with the tag, with the name, etc., and the phone number. So that's a little quick, trick to making sure you get all the information right, instead of you're with your trainer and you're like, oh, I forgot the tag. You go back there and you get it. Oh, I forgot the make and model. You run back out there and get the make and model. Oh no, I forgot their phone number. Oh, I run back out there and get it right. So you get all those things at once, making sure it's right. Or you write down the tag and you're like, oh man, is that an I or an L or a 1? Because you wrote a stick, right? So versus you took a picture of it, you don't have that problem. Okay, moving on. Interview people on the scene. Before interviewing people at the crash scene, you must make the distinction between the drivers involved, those who witnessed the crash, those who may have heard it, other passengers, etc. All right, let's see here. Anything important? Passenger statements are voluntary. So you can't force them to give a statement from the passenger, right? If they don't want to talk, they don't have to talk. But if the driver is unable to talk, then Florida law requires passengers to make a statement on behalf of the driver. So if you get there and someone's unconscious, then you do have the right to get a statement from the passengers. Make sure to separate drivers from witnesses, your normal stuff here. Okay, obviously before speaking with drivers to obtain information, take them to a safe location, such as away from oncoming traffic, protected from environmental conditions such as rain, hail, thunder, lightning, whatever, out of the path of emergency vehicles at the scene. Okay, now you have the order of interviews. Obviously, witnesses as soon as possible. Don't keep them there as longer than they need. Let's see here. Anything else? Obviously, verify everyone's information. I mean, this is a traffic crash. I mean, they're making this way too, in depth here, not gonna lie. Okay, during each interview, record everyone's information. Yes, we know that. Is there any information here that's good for the test? Let's see. Okay, people involved in the crash may have made spontaneous statements about the crash in their presence to fire or EMS. So yeah, that's a good one. If you could always ask EMS, hey, did they say anything? Did they make anything suspicious? I mean, on your normal traffic crash, they're going to say, yeah, I was in the right lane, and I was driving straight, this person turned right in front of me, blah, blah, blah. The person's going to say, yeah, I was trying to make a right, and this person was coming hauling ass. Well, unfortunately, ma'am, sir, you don't have the right of way, they do, you shouldn't have turned in front of them, so you're at fault, whatever, etc. There's not going to be this thing where it's like, all right, separate everybody, witnesses, victims, suspects, hey, fire EMS, did he say anything to you? They're going to be like, yeah, they said that they were upset that this person was speeding, right? Your normal traffic crash, I would say all of these steps and doing these weird things are more going to be on something that's like maybe a huge crash, maybe a THI, serious bodily injury, or something that just seems really weird, maybe like a stolen vehicle type crash, something like that. Then you're going to kind of follow more of these steps. When you're talking to anybody, determine if they are disabled, intoxicated, impaired, suffer from anything, do they take any medication. You may need to take written or recorded statements. This is generally during a hit and run, DUI, or a serious bodily injury investigation. Let's see here. Okay, practice empathy. We all know that one. All right, gather traffic crash evidence. So phases of a traffic crash. The 3 phases of a traffic crash are pre-collision, at collision, and post-collision. Know that for the test. Knowledge of each phase will help you determine how it occurred. Okay, let's get into phase 1. The pre-collision phase begins when the driver becomes aware of a danger or hazard. The point of perception occurs. Okay, so you need to know all these for the test. There's a lot of information here, so be prepared. So under pre-collision, you have point of perception, you have reaction time, evasive action, and the point of no escape. All of these relatively make sense. They all are obviously pre-collision, right? Evasion, reaction, point of perception. This is all before the accident. So for the sake of, if they ask, is reaction time pre-collision, at collision, or post-collision? It's pretty self-explanatory. Your reaction time is what happens before because you're reacting to what's happening. You haven't hit the car yet. So for the sake of that type of question, common sense will prevail, but make sure you also know the definitions of each one. So the point of perception occurs when the driver becomes aware of a danger or hazard. That is the point of perception, point of perceiving that something is happening. The reaction time is the length of time between the point of perception and the beginning of the evasive action. So the reaction time is when you realize something's happening and then, oh shoot, let me get out of the way. Then your getting out of the way part is your evasive action. Is any action the driver takes to alter the speed or direction of a vehicle or to avoid danger or hazards, such as applying the brakes, turning the steering wheel, or moving the vehicle out of the way. And then the point of no escape is the point in time when the crash is inevitable, regardless of the evasive action taken. So let's walk you through that. You're driving straight, somebody turns in front of you. As soon as they turn in front of you, you're like, oh shoot, that is the point of perception. Now, after you said, oh shoot, you jerk the steering wheel to the left. Right? So you have your point of perception of seeing it, your reaction time of, oh shoot, right? And then now your evasive action of slamming the steering wheel to the left. And then the point of no escape is realizing it's too late. I'm going to nail the car. And then you nail the car. That brings us to phase 2, the at collision phase, which begins at the time of the initial impact. So as soon as you make contact, that is the at collision phase. So there are 2 phases under at collision. You have encroachment and maximum engagement. So encroachment occurs when vehicles, property, or people begin to enter the same space at the same time and make contact. And where the first injury or damage may occur, the driver may still be able to take evasive action to reduce the severity of the crash. So for example, you hit the point of no escape, you hit their car, but you can still continue turning out of the way, and maybe you hit the bumper a little bit, but you are able to keep turning and you avoid and you hit the car and kind of glance off, right? So you are able to reduce the severity of the crash continually. But encroachment is when things start hitting each other. Then you have maximum engagement, is the point at which the vehicles, property, or people crush together to the greatest extent. So maximum engagement would be you're hitting the car, slamming, and then you start glancing away. When you get to that most maximum point, obviously that is your maximum engagement. That then leads us into phase 3. The post-collision phase, also known as disengagement, begins when the vehicles, property, or people separate, either naturally or from post-crash intervention by a person. Okay, so a second impact can occur in chain reaction collisions or when one vehicle glances off another into the path of a third vehicle or object. So obviously, that's pretty self-explanatory. Know that phase 3 is known as disengagement, which is post-collision. I think these are pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you don't confuse like reaction time, point of perception, point of no escape. The terms themselves kind of speak to the definitions, so they should be relatively easy to remember. All right, now we're moving on to vehicle dynamics during a traffic crash. Basic physics states that an object in motion continues to remain in motion until acted upon by an external force. Vehicle dynamics refers to vehicle movement during and after a collision. Know what that is. Vehicle dynamics refers to vehicle movement during and after a collision. It can help you determine how and why the crash occurred, and the AOC, the area of collision. Test question. The AOC/area of collision is the location of the first harmful event or the first damage-producing event in the traffic crash. So the first harmful event, like I said with my example, they hit the median, that is the area of collision, right? Or maybe it's just a bumper-to-bumper traffic crash. The area of collision would be obviously the many bumpers, but like where, right? So let's say it's a single vehicle accident and they hit the light post, but maybe they hit the median first and put a gouge in the median. That would be your area of collision, right? That's the first harmful event. Alright, the AOC assists you in determining the direction a vehicle is traveling and the probable location of the debris field. The point of impact, test question, is the place where a moving vehicle or object struck another vehicle, another object, or the road. So the point of impact would be where the front bumper hit the back bumper, or the side view mirror hit the side of the car, or the front passenger side hit the light post. Obviously, that's pretty self-explanatory there. That's the point of impact. Struck or moved vehicles in the path of the vehicle may alter the vehicle dynamics and help determine the AOC by showing the path of the vehicle followed either before or after the crash. Look for objects to kind of help figure out which way everything was going. Okay, then we get some examples here of vehicles hitting where goes what direction. So this was on the test. These diagrams were on the test, and there were at least 3 of them from what I recall. So do know how this works. So example 1, you have a vehicle heading north and a vehicle heading east. So let's just say up and to the right, if you're listening. If you're going up and to the right, then the vehicles will go top right. Okay? Then the second example is if a vehicle is going down and a vehicle is going left, it's going to go down left, right? Example 3, vehicle is going down and one is going right, then it's going to go down right. If the vehicle is going up and to the left, it's going to go up left. So obviously they use northwest, southwest, etc. That's how it's going to be in the test. They're going to say, vehicles traveling north, striking a second vehicle traveling west. Expect the 2 vehicles to travel into what quadrant? And then you're going to have to say the northwest quadrant. So know that diagram for the test. Just know it inside out. I mean, it is pretty self-explanatory. If 2 cars are heading in this direction, they're going to kind of continue going in that direction. 50-50, right? All right, traffic crash evidence. Let's see here. Just keep in mind that the road may have pre-existing damage. Pre-existing damage is a test question here. It is any damage existing on a vehicle before the crash. It is usually identified as damage that does not fit the pattern of the crash and appears rusted, dirty, or weathered. Contact damage, know that for the test, is any damage that did not exist on a vehicle before the crash. Contact damage results from the direct pressure of any object in a collision or rollover and appears as scrape marks, material rub-off, fiber transfer, hair or blood, punctures or imprints to a bumper, guardrail, or other fixed object. Contact damage should tell you the part of the vehicle hit first by examining the direction of the damage on the vehicle and tracing the damage backwards to the first appearance of damage. Contact damage should be consistent with other physical evidence, statements from people involved, and independent witnesses. I would expect probably at least 2 questions on contact damages. Definitely a test question on pre-existing damage. And now we have induced damage, also test question. Induced damage is any damage that did not exist before the crash, but unlike contact damage, is not visually evident at the crash scene. So induced damage can be bending, breaking, crumpling, twisting, distortion, or buckling of vehicle metal. So induced damage could be the frame bent, but you're not going to see that at the traffic crash. I mean, usually you're not going to see that. It might have just been a bumper to bumper, but you don't see that the frame inside actually twisted, right? So that's your induced damage. Now we have road evidence. A gouge is a cut into the surface of the road where some part of the vehicle removed the road surface material. For example, a bolt on the underside of a vehicle cuts into the pavement, leaving a trench or gouge in the road at the area of collision. A gouge may also indicate an area of collision. So how that happens is when 2 cars hit, the car that hit the car in front is probably going to go downward. It's then going to hit the concrete and scrape. So that gouge determines the AOC That's a test question. All right, now a scrape, these are all test questions, is a broad area of a hard surface covered with many scratches, striations, or streak marks made without great pressure by a sliding metal part. Scrapes occur between the area of collision and the point of the vehicle's final rest. So you have the gouge, which determines the area of collision. Then you have a scrape, which goes from the area of collision where it's scraped all the way till they stopped. Now, runoff is a pool or trail of fluids escaping from a vehicle because of impact. Quite often, hard impacts will make radiators, hoses, and brake lines burst. The liquid will obviously run out. Often, these liquids will leave a trail from the area of collision to the final resting place. While it doesn't pinpoint the exact location of the area of collision, runoffs can provide evidence of the general location. Now we have debris, which is loose material spread across the road due to the crash. Obviously, it can be dirt, liquid, vehicle parts, and other materials. Okay, identifying where the debris begins and ends helps determine, the area of collision and the direction. Let's see here. It can also, the direction of travel too. If all the pieces are flying that way, then obviously they came from, if all the pieces are flying forward, then obviously they came from behind you. All right, let's see here. All right, tire marks. A surface mark is any mark created by a vehicle's tire at a crash scene. Each type of surface mark on the road at the scene can provide specific information. Tires can create several different types of marks depending on the road surface, what the brakes are doing, how the vehicle is accelerating or decelerating, and what the steering wheel is doing during the traffic crash. Your task is to determine which mark came from which vehicle and from which tire of the vehicle. A skid mark is the black mark left by a tire sliding while it is unable to rotate. Skid marks tend to be straight, although they can show some curvature due to asymmetrical braking, because not all brake pads lock simultaneously. Okay, these factors can make the vehicle depart from a straight ahead path. The tire grooves are generally visible and easy to see in a skid mark. Front tire skid marks tend to be darker than rear tire marks, as weight shifts towards the front of the vehicle when braking. So generally when you brake, your vehicle shifts forward, the weight goes on the front tires, and that's why you have darker skid marks come from the front tires. So keep that in mind, that'll be a test question. Also know that the outside edges of a tire may be darker than the inside area. Rear tire skid marks tend to be even in appearance with no dark outside edges. When a vehicle brakes hard, tire rotation will stop before skid marks begin. So skid marks don't start until tire rotation stops. Tires leave a light discoloration or shadow mark, which is often difficult to see on the road. Okay. So you have insipid skid or impending skid mark. This is the type of skid mark left by an anti-lock braking system, ABS. The incipient skid is the place you will begin to measure the skid mark. It is temporary and may be visible for only 15 to 20 minutes after the crash. So keep that in mind, that incipient skids disappear 15 to 20 minutes after, right? And you see them in like stop and go, because that comes from the anti-lock brake system. Make sure you know what ABS is. That is the anti-lock braking system. And ABS scuff marks are the patterns left by a vehicle with anti-lock brakes when a driver brakes hard. A scuff mark is a tire mark from a wheel that is both rotating and slipping on the road surface. So again, that is a scuff mark. It is rotating and slipping. So like I said, kind of that stop and go skid mark. That is your incipient skid, and those are ABS scuff marks. Let's see here. Okay, then you have intermittent skid marks, are a series of heavy skid marks with long gaps of more than 15 feet between them. So just remember, intermittent skid marks have 15 feet between them, caused by a driver who rapidly applies and releases the brakes to stop the vehicle. Skid marks made by a bouncing vehicle that just struck a pothole or bump in the road are not continuous. However, the length of the skid mark and the length of the space between them are uniform, consistent, and less than 3 to 4 feet apart. Then you have skip skid marks, are a series of skid marks, usually short in length, with irregular intervals between them. This pattern appears on the road when a vehicle has a sudden load shift from braking hard, causing the vehicle to bounce. Skip skid marks are typically from trailer vehicles. However, a vehicle skidding on a bumpy road can also make this type of mark. Then we have offset skid marks are skid marks that indicate a sudden change in the direction of a tire due to collision forces. They are the direct result of the movement of the vehicle by the force of collision and occur at the moment of impact. The only item of evidence pinpointing the exact area of collision on road is offset skid marks. That is a test question. That is the only evidence. So the gouge, not the debris. It is offset skid marks because the only thing that's going to move a car sideways is the accident from the collision from another car. So that is how you know that's the exact AOC. A squeegee mark is a strip of dry pavement remaining after a vehicle skids on a wet road. The locked tire acts similarly to a window squeegee by removing water from the skid path. Due to the way these marks are made, they disappear quickly and are temporary evidence. A furrow mark is a type of trench dug by locked tires moving across a soft surface such as gravel, sand, grass, or dirt. It is shallow and then deepens with the stuff piling behind it. Alright, a scuff or yaw mark occurs when a vehicle loses tire traction from entering a curve too fast or from oversteering. The tires continue rotating but slide sideways at the same time, leaving marks that remain on the road. Scuff or yaw marks are always curved and will show a sideways striping or striation from the side motion of the tires. These will show the driver beginning to lose control of the vehicle. Acceleration scuff marks result from rapid acceleration, such as burnouts, obviously, causing the tires to produce gradually fading dark tire marks. And then last but not least, a tire print is a mark left by a tire rolling over a soft material such as sand or dirt, or rolling through a liquid on a hard surface such as oil, which leaves an identifiable pattern matching the tread of the tire. Alright, you're going to ask, do I need to memorize all those for the test? Yes, it is horrible. There's like 10 of them there. They're pretty similar. My advice, as always, is to memorize the unique aspects about them, right? What makes them what they are. So a skid mark, it's just the mark left by a tire, okay? Anti-lock braking system scuff marks are the patterns left by a vehicle for ABS. So if they bring up ABS, then it is ABS scuff mark. Simple as that. And it is rotating and slipping, right? Then your intermittent skid marks, you have heavy skid marks with long gaps of 15 feet. So anything that says 15 feet, intermittent. Or if it has uniform, consistent 3 to 4 feet apart, those are also intermittent. So just anything that has like distance between them, I'm pretty sure that's the only one that talks about distance between them is intermittent. Okay, then you have your skip skid marks. So I guess there is some distance between them, but usually probably smaller. Skip skid, just think bouncing, jumping. So the trailer, if they bring up anything about a trailer, it's skip skid. If they bring up bumps in the road, skip skid. Okay. Know that offset skid marks, it is the only evidence pinpointing the exact AOC. So they're probably going to ask it that way. That's how you know it's offset. Okay, it's just a change in direction. So the car was here, all of a sudden it moved to the right. Cars don't do that. That is your offset skid. Squeegee mark, just think of a squeegee. It has to do with water. So if it removes water, then it's a squeegee mark. A furrow mark is just a trench, whether it's sand, dirt, grass, whatever. It's just a trench from the tire, okay? A scuff or yaw mark is if they're like turning and they're kind of doing like a 180, right? So that it's like it's just like curved. So that's how you know it's a scuff or yaw mark. Obviously, acceleration mark, just think of doing burnouts. And then a tire print is just a mark left by a tire, okay, on a soft material. So a lot of them there, I would just memorize them like that. Like I said, find the key thing that is different, that makes them different. Because a lot of them have the same definitions, but there is one thing that makes them different. So memorize that part. Okay, make sure to photograph the traffic crash scene. Bum, bum, bum. Nothing crazy. If you're going to do a traffic crash, get all 4 corners. Get it from the edges, get it from the sides, get it from the front, back, etc. Okay, measuring the traffic crash scene. This is all like THI stuff. You're not going to take measurements. You're usually not even going to take pictures. I only take pictures if it's a weird traffic crash, if there's like property damage so that the city has proof. Your normal bumper to bumper, stuff like that, I'm not taking pictures. I encourage people to take pictures for their own sake, because traffic crashes are kind of civil in nature. It's really up to the person. But if it's a weird one, or if it's like a big car pile up, or if there's like major injuries, but if it's major injuries, THI is probably going to come out, and you're not going to be doing anything anyway. So keep that in mind for real life. Okay, instruments to measure. These were on the test, yes. You have rolling measuring wheels, you have fiberglass and steel measuring tapes, and you have laser measuring devices. Make sure to measure the temporary evidence first. So AOC, scuff marks, squeegee marks, tire marks, skid marks, tire prints, gouges and scratches, debris of any type, vehicle parts, liquids or runoff, any item damage, final resting positions, etc. So those are temporary evidence. Know those for the test in case they ask which of these are temporary evidence. Measure more permanent evidence as soon as practical. So road dimensions, sight distances, grade or slope, locations of traffic control devices, distances between landmarks, etc. All right, measuring skid marks. Again, you're not doing this unless you're in THI. If a crash is suspected to be the result of a criminal act involving homicide or serious bodily injury, after photographing the scene and taking measurements, a traffic homicide investigator uses mathematical formulas to figure out the speed. All right, the procedures for measuring skid marks include determining how many wheels were skidding and matching each skid mark to a specific wheel. Investigators use the following abbreviations to identify which tire made a specific mark on the road. Obviously, LF, left front, LR, left rear, RF, right front, and RR, right rear. I don't recall those being on the test. Okay, to measure skid marks, locate the beginning, the end, and all gaps made by each wheel and mark using an agency-approved method. Okay, let's see. Let's get some stuff that's for the test here. Okay, field sketch of the traffic crash scene, because we're out here drawing on a pad of paper for a field sketch. You're probably never going to do this, and if you are, it's going to be in THI, but for the sake of the test, record the locations and lengths of all skid marks. A field sketch is a rough drawing of the scene. Know it for the test, obviously. Okay, make sure to be consistent with your drawings. Include only significant and factual observable items, etc. All right, step 7. Driver exchange of information. You must complete a driver's exchange of information form at all traffic crashes. Florida state law requires it. And you exchange them with each person. Okay, the officer is also responsible for submitting the report within 10 days. So if it is a traffic crash, you have 10 days to submit it. Obviously, you're going to do it probably within the hour or at least by that night. Florida law requires drivers to exchange information and report that information to DHSMV within 10 days of the traffic crash incident. Okay, whether you determine the traffic crash incident does or does not require a written report, use form HSMV 900-11S. Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to have to memorize that for the test, the 900-11S or 90,011S. Okay, that includes a driver report of the traffic crash, which is a self-report, and the driver exchange of information form. Okay. Show the drivers what fields to complete and where to sign. We don't sign on ours, so I don't know why it's saying to sign that. It's going to need their name, insurance, etc. Okay. If you do not use the HSMV 911S for driver exchange of information, provide each driver of non-motorist with the other party's driver and vehicle information. So the HSMV 900-11S is just your normal driver exchange information form. Nothing crazy. Let's see here. It's saying that people can't complete the form. You complete the form. So I don't see if you'd be an agency that you'd be handwriting this stuff. It's all electronic. You print it out. You hit them a copy. So, but for the sake of the test, just keep this in mind here. All right, step 8, taking enforcement action. Did they admit to being on their phone? Did you see them run the red light? Basically is kind of what we're doing here. Okay, the following are 3 types of traffic violations usually associated with traffic crash situations. So your first one is contributing traffic violations. This violation is a direct cause or contribution to the traffic crash itself, such as a vehicle running a red light and striking another vehicle. These types of violations include, but are not limited to, violating right of way, driving left to center, improper U-turn, improper pass, defective equipment, running a red light, stop sign, driving carelessly, texting while driving, etc. So contributing traffic violation is direct cause to the accident. Then you have non-contributing traffic violation. So it has no direct bearing to the cause of the traffic crash. However, you do discover it while doing it. So they have no insurance, not wearing a seatbelt, driver's license violation, maybe a learner's permit who's driving by themselves, or their license is expired, and you would write them a ticket for, license suspended, or you write them a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt, or their registration is expired, etc. Then you have a non-traffic violation. This violation is a criminal offense discovered during the traffic crash. So if they have cocaine, if they have a warrant, etc. Let's see here. Surprisingly, vehicle defects cause few traffic crashes. In most cases, at least one driver commits one or more contributing traffic violations. Okay, most are from driver error. You can realize that both drivers may have committed violations. In addition to uncovering the primary violator, you're responsible for detecting other violations drivers may have committed. So, for example, this one person exited an apartment complex and shot across the lanes, causing an accident. But the person they hit was making an illegal U-turn. So technically, the first person who crossed all 3 lanes of traffic, it was their fault. They had, obviously, that contributing traffic, right, violation. But the person who was also making a legal U-turn, if he wasn't doing that, probably wouldn't have caused the accident. He is partly at fault. So in that situation, I wrote the first guy a ticket for driving carelessly or crossing 3 lanes. The other guy wrote a ticket for an illegal U-turn. And then the other 3 or 4 cars that were involved in the accident just, sucks to suck, wrong place, wrong time. All right, traffic citations. Nothing fancy, okay. All right, let's see. You issued a UTC to the person cited, but their signature is not required. All right, step 9, return the scene to normal as quickly as possible if appropriate. So that could be simple as removing hazards and debris from the road. Usually your tow company is going to do that. They're going to come out there with the brushes and they're going to sweep it all up, put it off the side of the road, take it with them, put the sand down for oil spills and things like that. You're not generally going to do that. You can help out, grab a bumper, do whatever. Florida law requires drivers of operable crash vehicles to move their vehicles off the road. If the vehicle is immovable, request a tow truck to remove both the vehicle and any associated debris from the road. Alright, before leaving the scene, scan the area, make sure you didn't leave anything behind, cones, flashlights, etc. Make sure everything's cleaned up. Make sure you verified all forms are completed and copies are distributed. Give out your citations if necessary. Return all personal documents. If you make an arrest, then obviously follow your procedures there. Step 10, document the crash. Okay, so now we have our reports. DHSMV creates and publishes the Florida Traffic Crash Report Forms and the Uniform Traffic Crash Report Manual. These forms and the instruction manual are available from the DHSMV website. DHSMV is the official records custodian for completed traffic crash reports and is responsible for all applicable record retention requirements. Again, the Department of Highway Safety Motor Vehicle, DHSMV. Those are test questions. Okay, there are 2 basic forms related to traffic crashes. I knew there was 2. I was tripping up earlier. So they are both HSMV. One is 900-11S. One is 900-10S. So the 900-11S functions as a driver report of traffic crash, a self-report, or a driver exchange of information, where the 910S is also the traffic crash report, which functions as a long form or short form or an update form. Okay, so if you're doing a self-report, it is 911. Okay, or if it's the exchange of information, it is the 911. Okay, 910 is your normal short form, long form, or an update form. All right, let's talk about the long form, which is what? 910S. Okay, so it's a short form and an update form. So for the long form, you have a duty to investigate and submit a long form for traffic crashes that meet any of the following criteria. Know this for the test. You also need to know this for your job. So use the long form if the crash resulted in death, personal injury, or pain, or any sort of injury. So if there's any injuries at all, you're doing a long form. If a driver left the scene that involved damage to an attendant vehicle, so if it's a hit and run, you're doing a long form. If a driver drove while under the influence, DUI, long form. A vehicle was rendered inoperable so that a wrecker has to move it. So whether it's airbags deployed, wheel fell off, flat tires, long form. A commercial motor vehicle was involved, so tractor trailer, things like that, long form. All right. Let's see. There may be additional criteria for your agency, so keep that in mind. Make sure you get all information. All right. Here we go. Describe how to complete the Florida Traffic Crash Report, long form. Okay, you have an event section, a vehicle section, a person section, a narrative section, and a diagram section. Those are pretty self-explanatory. Not going to go through those. I will be doing a video here shortly where I will show you how to fill out a traffic crash report. They are pretty standard across the state, so yours should look identical because it is from the Florida, Highway Safety Motor Vehicle. So they'll all be uniform. I'll go through it. I'll show you how to fill in each boxes. I'll give you some examples. Stay tuned for that video. But let's see here. Okay, driver re-examination or medical review. Let's see here. So if you believe that they have a physical or mental impairment, you can click the recommend driver re-exam, and you have to explain the reasons why you're doing it. So you have to put it in a paragraph section on the narrative section of the traffic crash report. So inside your traffic crash report, you're going to say, I recommended this driver for re-exam because X, Y, Z. You then have to attach a completed medical reporting form. The form 72190, no, that's probably not going to be on the test. But they will say, what you have to submit. It's going to be a medical reporting form. And you have to request a report driver for medical review in David. So in David, you have to fill out a thing saying why you are requesting them to have re-examination. All right, diagram section. This is the little drawing. It's going to be electronic. You move the little boxes. You move the little fake cars. You do the little road thing. You do the little, bumper crash sign. Things like that. Nothing too crazy. Let me see if there's anything that I feel like is test worthy. Use directional arrows, north, south, east, and west. Show how lanes are, the different types of lanes. You got lanes with medians, lanes that are divided, undivided, turn lanes, 2 lanes, 4 lanes, etc. Make sure, so like a test question was, make sure the not to scale notation is inside the thing. Little things like that. Okay, at minimum, document the following information in the diagram. So this may be on the test in some different ways. So the location of the traffic crash, obviously the road names, road markings, which way is north, any physical evidence that was on the road, skid marks, holes, standing water, vehicles, animals, people, vehicles position, both pre-collision, at collision, and post-collision. So you have your vehicle where it kind of was coming from, your vehicle where it hit, and then your vehicle where it stops, right? Obviously final rest and measurements if possible. All right, so now we're going to talk about the short form, which is the 910S. Again, same as the long form, 910S. The only time it's 911S is when it is what? That's only when it is the driver exchange of information form or the self-report. All right, so the short form, it has an event section, a vehicle section, and a person section. So technically for a short form, you don't have to do a narrative. You don't have to actually write the report, but your agency policies and procedures might say differently. So with us, our agency policy and procedure says we have to write a report no matter the traffic crash, no matter what type. But you don't have to do a diagram. So, it just depends. But with a short form, just keep in mind you don't have to do a narrative. It's only person, vehicle, and the event. All right, so then we have, but you do need to put your signature in the narrative section. So if you don't have to do a report, great. That's what you do. All right, then we have the 910S update form. Let's see here. Dun, dun, dun. Check the box mark update form. Complete only the necessary sections. Generally, you do an update form if you have to update like their blood alcohol content. You have to update their insurance information, update injury status change, hit and run information, or any corrections to the original report. So there's a traffic crash once. I didn't do the original report. Someone came back like the next day and said, hey, I met with the gas station owner. He has video footage. Can you come meet me? Because the cop put me at fault when this red light clearly determines that I wasn't at fault. I went there. I saw the footage. I saw the other guy ran the red light. I did the update form. I put in, this is my narrative. I came to this location, saw the footage. This person ran the red light at this time, hitting this car. So this person is at fault due to running a red light, etc. All right, there are some common errors. Obviously, basically everything could be a common error. They have like 25 things listed here. Any of these can be errors, whether it's just errors adding the location, errors adding whether the airbag's deployed, etc. All right. Okay, then we have some unique traffic crashes. Let's get some test information here. Okay, shifting from civil to criminal traffic crash investigations. Initially, you will conduct most traffic crash investigations as a civil investigation. A driver has a statutory duty to make a report and provide information to the officer making the crash report. This information will become part of your civil investigations. They basically have to tell you what happened, right? At some point, you'll find evidence that could shift to a criminal investigation, but you must separate them. You must specifically tell the driver that the civil traffic crash investigation is complete and a criminal crash investigation is beginning. Also, keep in mind, the test question, you cannot include any information the driver provided during the civil investigation portion during the criminal investigation portion. So if the driver's like, oh, I made a right, this, and that, during the civil one, you can't go and use that in your criminal one. All right. Let's see here. Procedural justice. Okay. The driver has a legal crash privilege that lets them provide information about the crash to law enforcement without worrying that it will be used against them in a criminal case. So that is crash privilege. Okay, when you tell the driver that their investigation is changing from a civil to a criminal one, their crash privilege ends. This is known as changing hats. If the driver is no longer free to leave because you are detaining them, you must read them their Miranda. Okay. Hit and run vehicle crash. I did a video on this one as well. Okay, so if one of the vehicles involved in a crash leaves the scene, consider this a hit and run. Based on the elements, this may be a misdemeanor or a felony. Okay, let's see here. Check for video footage, get statements, try to figure out what information you have. If the vehicle remained on scene but the driver fled, look for clues of the driver's presence, such as their wallet, their purses, their phone, DNA, etc. Crash privilege does not apply to hit-and-run suspects. They are not protected under this rule. As a result, you will read Miranda as soon as you see them. You can't say, well, tell me what happened. It doesn't work like that. Because it's already a crime. They committed a crime. They left the scene. Okay, traffic crashes involving unattended vehicles or property. Let's see here. You should identify the owner of the vehicle and notify them of the damage. Give the license plate number to dispatch. Let's see here. Give them a driver exchange information. It's really the same thing. Two vehicles. Obviously, there's only one person because only one person was driving. The other one was unattended. You would obviously include that in your narrative. If their car was parked outside their house, then obviously leave the driver exchange form on their door if you can't get a hold of them. All right, single vehicle crashes. Let's see here. In a single vehicle crash, the driver is usually outside of the vehicle. Often there is a wheel witness who can establish what happened and identify that the person standing at the scene is the same person who got out from behind the wheel. When no witness is present, you may have sufficient evidence to prove that the person behind the wheel during the crash is the person inside the vehicle. So, one, they'll probably just admit it, be like, yeah, that's my car, I was driving, this, and that. One, they could have damage to their face from the airbags. Things like that. Searching the vehicle interior is legal under the Carroll Doctrine, which gives you permission to search any vehicle of a crashed vehicle if probable cause indicates that the vehicle contains evidence of a crime. Let's see here. Contact the owner if possible. Identify the driver. See if there's bruising from a seatbelt or something. Let's see here. Traffic crash involving a fatality or a serious bodily injury. If a traffic crash results in life-threatening injuries or death, protect the scene as you would a crime scene. Do not move any vehicles or objects within the scene. Do not disturb anything. Don't move anything. Okay. Medical examiners, THI stuff. We're not getting into that. Okay. Driver impairment as the cause of the crash. Be alert to evidence and indicators of driver impairment from drugs, alcohol, drowsiness, or health problems. If the crash investigation reveals the driver may be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, advise the driver that you are ending the civil investigation and beginning a DUI criminal investigation, aka changing of hats. And that concludes Chapter 12, Traffic Crash Investigations. Unfortunately, that is a short chapter, but man, it took me over an hour to get through this material. There is a lot of material, a lot of definitions, which is a good thing. I like chapters that have a lot of definitions because that means the test is going to be more definition focused. So I would say that this test is going to be more definition focused, but do expect some weird parts to be in here as well. I will be doing a shortened version of this. I'm going to try to get it under 30 minutes, so stay tuned for that version as well. With this test, there was a lot of material. Don't get bogged down. Focus on the important stuff. Like I said, always get those definitions down pat, then focus on the steps and the little extra material that may be important that may be on the test there. That'll conclude Chapter 12. And I'll see you guys on Chapter 13. Deputy Z signing off. Catch you on the next video.